Well, we thought the season started tonight, but maybe it doesn't. We pushed that back to Tuesday after the Sixers fall, losing their fourth in a row to the Memphis Grizzlies on a winless three-game road trip. Final score 117-111, and while they did fight at the end to come back, it wasn't really that close for the Sixers and the Grizzlies. Mind you, the Grizzlies were on the second night of a back-to-back after a loss to the Denver Nuggets on Tuesday night, and they dropped in 19 threes to the Philadelphia 76ers 10. A big reason why this one was an L for the Sixers, but that wasn't the only one, and we will get to all of that right here on the PHLY Sixers Postgame Show presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app and use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Alongside Kyle Newbeck, I'm Devon Givens. Brianna's here. All of you in the chat, we're all ticked off at this fifth loss in a row, the fifth consecutive for the 76ers. And we have a lot to get into. Don't forget, if you heard us during pregame or maybe you didn't, we're going to have Hall of Famer Marc Stein join us shortly to talk
maybe
about
he can figure out what the fuck is wrong with this team.
And this particular loss in and of itself. Have the super chats rolling in. We'll discuss it all. We're going to get it all out tonight, too, by the way, folks, because we're off on Thursday. So get in here now and let's have a chat. Kyle, a lot happened in this one. Joel scored 35, though.
That is maybe the most unacceptable loss of the Joel Embiid era. And having Joel Embiid's name attached to that is unfortunate because we can get to him later. I think he finally bounced back. I think back against the wall, performed as, we kind of hoped that he would. He had the mid-range. He had the other stuff. I don't even know where to begin. I guess the place I want to start is a place I rarely go, which is the head coach of this team has had zero answers so far. And I've been willing to sit back and observe and wait and say, look, the team's in chaos. It's a 3-star team where they've rarely, even had 1 star available, let alone 2, let alone 3, as they did to start the game tonight. But when you repeatedly make stupid-ass decisions over and over and over again, when you can't just take the low-hanging fruit, when you can't do something as simple as having one of 3 stars on the floor at any given time, when you have actions that work and you don't go to them, right? Like, one of the things, Doc Rivers took a ton of criticism in this town, including from me, including from you and Derek. One of the things that they did well under him, that Joel took to, that all those guys took to, is we have a play that works. We're going to run it down your fucking throat until you prove you can stop it. That was, on many occasions, just running a basic spread middle pick and roll with James Harden and Joel Embiid. And later that turned into Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid.
Yep.
Did we see that at times tonight? Yeah, maybe a few times. And they got good shots out of it. And they got Joel Embiid makes out of it. You should be spamming that right now. You do not have the continuity. You don't have the secondary scoring. You don't have the trust in other guys to be trying to run other stuff and trying to run a free-flowing dribble handoff offense. Give the ball to your stars, play through the stars, and run through those bread and butter actions. That's number one. Number two, it was okay to me to be, 5 games in, Andre Drummond's struggling, and say, we need to let him play through it, right? We can't give up on a guy that we used salary cap space on in the summer, right? This was not just some token vet min backup that they brought in that whatever, if they get killed in those minutes, Joel's going to save the day. This is a guy who they explicitly recruited. They explicitly used resources for. So you give him a bit of leeway. It has become abundantly clear he's not up to the task right now. He has sucked for the majority of his minutes. They are losing them handily, often. And just because Guerschon Yabusele has some limitations and has problems to work around does not change the fact that they have played wildly better with Yabusele at the 5, put some wings around him, put a real guard out there, and let them cook. And what did Nick Nurse do to open the fourth quarter tonight after Joel Embiid played the whole third quarter to try to keep them within an arm's length of the Grizzlies? He decided to play Andre Drummond against a team playing 5 out and Jay Huff rain fucking threes on his head, and they stretched him out because that's what happens when you play Andre Drummond against a team playing 5 out. And he has not leveraged his strength or his size on the other end of the floor. And then Kyle Lowry didn't play tonight, so we don't have to go down the overuse of Kyle Lowry. But there are so many different things that are like, what are you watching? What team do you think you have that this guy's on the floor or this guy's playing 25 minutes? Like, the easy stuff is not being done. And so it's so hard to get into the granular detail, to get into, the scheme and, who's being used in what lineup and things like that. Because this is just basic. This guy has sucked. This guy's been good. And you can't figure that out 14 games into the season. That's insane to me. It's ridiculous.
It really is. And look, we talked about this in the pregame of Tyrese Maxey is back. Paul George is there as well, along with Joel Embiid. Do the stuff that's really simple, especially after this team meeting where your best player reportedly says, I don't know what we're running out there on the floor. So when you do that and you don't know what you're running out there on the floor, you do the simple things, as Kyle just mentioned, and lay it all out there very easily for you to run. And you make them. You dictate how that defense is going to play. Again, shorthanded, mind you, that Memphis Grizzlies team on the second night of a back-to-back. You need to dictate how things are going to go out there on that floor. Instead, we got the opposite, where they started running all of these different types of actions, where it did not get Joel Embiid into his sweet spot until a little bit later on, where he was putting the ball on the floor, going into traffic, instead of just taking that short jumper. We talked about Jared McCain trying to get into that flow of understanding how to run that pick and pop that Tyrese Maxey and James Harden have done so well with Embiid, and it's going to take some time. But guess what? Again, try it with the young fella early to see if it works. And, of course, with Tyrese Maxey, since he is returning. That was not there. So what do you get? And while the Sixers were in the first quarter, they were in there, you don't get enough of it for it to go out there again to bleed it until it's dry, to make that Memphis defense figure out a way of how to defend that pick and pop, pick and roll, where you got Maxey coming off that screen, using his speed to get him going after he had a bad night, to get him going with a play like that also, because they had to respect the jump shot from Joel Embiid. And then when you talk about the other things of the substitution, the defense wasn't good. They didn't know their rotations. They weren't speaking enough. You talked about the Huff part. Did they forget the scouting report that they had in that blowout loss that they had here in Philadelphia, where he rained threes on the defense at that time? Did they forget that? Oh, by the way, no Ja Morant, no Marcus Smart, no Zach Edey. You have to defend Desmond Bane. He gets loose in that second quarter to get cooking, and they forgot how to defend him. The ball is swinging. I'm yelling to Kyle, Bree, and Chris, the hot hand is open. What are you doing? You don't double team Ricky. I love you. Go get him, Rick. You don't double team the man cutting in the basket when it's a weaker offensive player and leave the hot hand open on the wing when he already started cooking. You can't do that. So everything continues to go wrong of knowing time, situation, knowing your personnel, understanding how to run your offense, speaking on defense, where it gets you in trouble. And while you may go on a run and you take the lead, they respond, the opposition does, because you cannot sustain anything long enough with the 10 players that Nick Nurse decided to, as you mentioned, all of that. 10 players played. The rotation, we thought we're going to have one starter out there, and we jokingly talked about Jared McCain.
You're actually underselling it, by the way. They played 12 guys in that game.
Yeah.
We were like, hey, maybe 8, 9. Like, get a solid 8, 9.
12.
Now, some of that is minute restriction, and Paul George gets hurt and all that. But, like, dude, it's not a way to win.
It's not.
You don't win that way. And this isn't college basketball. You can't just play everybody.
And now, when you do bring up the coach, does he feel that heat that we've been talking about? Because he's like, I got to find something. I have to figure something out to get this thing going. And whatever it was, it just simply wasn't working. We haven't gotten to the Maxey part of things, of his minutes. We haven't gotten to the fact that Paul George, we'll get to him and the injury there, and Yabusele being out there over Andre Drummond. And we'll bring you into our office and bring to our studio. Kyle says, going into the fourth quarter, you bring in Drummond or you bring in Yabusele? Said, Kyle, you know what? He's going Drummond. He brings in Drummond.
We knew it going in, and we knew it was a mistake, and it still happened.
Exactly, and it's still a mistake. And here we are, where this team is now Count them. 14 games in with 2 wins on the season. Two wins on the season through 14 games. We have talked about this basketball team ad nauseum throughout the summer of how this team is good enough where they can go through stretches where they're going to miss 1, maybe 2 of your 2 All-Stars. And we did not see this Jared McCain thing coming for the 76ers either. And they're sitting here with 2 wins, with all of that, what we believe, all of us, including you in the chat. There are some who push back, but you also said, all right, it was a good offseason. Now let's see how it plays out. None of us thought we would be here again 14 games in where this basketball team has 2 wins. 2 on the season. This sucks right now with this group.
But you know what?
And the 2 wins, as Charles says, overtime wins. Yes, Charles, 2 overtime wins by this basketball team. Otherwise, they would be 0-14 on the campaign.
You know what's crazy about you bringing up the 2 wins?
What's that?
When I wrote a piece for allphly.com, the second that Tyrese Maxey went down with an injury, I said, best case, looking at this stretch, is 3-11. Mm-hmm. They're 2-12. This was that's what's so obnoxious about the whole thing is like based on what we saw from players, coaches, the available roster, I could sit there 2 weeks ago and tell you this is the ceiling on what they can achieve in that amount of time. That's a bad place to be for a team that in the offseason, everyone's, hey, they won the offseason. They got Paul George, biggest free agent signing in history, blah, 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 blah. You go down the list. And again, we keep hammering this. They nailed the draft pick. They got as good of a player as you could possibly hope for at 16, right? We're talking about, they're not keeping that pick. They're going to trade him for some help right now. Yep. Probably like the ceiling on trading that pick is a Caleb Martin type of player.
Yep.
And they got a guy who might be part of the future core, right? Like we see Jared McCain out there and are like, he might be a real point guard. Like the playmaking is there and he's able to run the offense and manage the game and get to his spots, be a relocation shooter.
We're yelling in the moment, swing the ball to him.
Get him the ball more. Right. He's 20 years old and you're like, get this kid the ball. For that to be the case and for you to get a 35-point outing from Joel Embiid where he wasn't perfect, right? He had some issues, but he rallied and he responded. And to be down 20 to the fucking hospital Grizzlies on the second night of a back-to-back, that is humiliating. This is not tenable. Like, I am not a trade everyone, fire everyone guy. Like, I don't believe in talking about people that way. I don't believe in talking about people's jobs that way. But I don't see how, as an organization, based on the expectations, based on the talent available, based on what you think you know about all the people in the positions of power, I don't know how you can sit here, look at 2-12, and look at what the 2-12 actually is, which is losses to the Raptors, right? A loss tonight to this version of the Grizzlies, a loss to the Detroit Pistons. This is not a team that has had a tough schedule. It would be one thing if it's like, hey, you played Cleveland like 3 times, you played Boston multiple times, the Thunder before Chet went down. They've had an easy schedule.
Yes,
they should not be anywhere close to 2-12, even with all the surrounding context with the injuries. This is absolutely ridiculous. And I don't know how you go about it, but something needs to happen because the big fella responded tonight. And I will give credit to the guys that were on the floor at the end of that game.
Yep.
They still battled, right? And so the players are out there who at least have the adequate skill and talent to play and be out there at the end of the game, but they have not been put in a position to succeed. I don't know what the solution is, but I know it's unacceptable right now, and something's got to happen. I don't know what that is.
For the last couple of weeks, as we've talked about this basketball team being so bad, I've said, hey, everybody, relax. The East is bad. They're only 3 games out of 4th place. Well, right now, they're now 14 games in, and as a result of them continuing to lose and other teams winning, every team right now in the top 6 has at least a 1-game winning streak. So with the 76ers right now, They are 4.5 games back of the 6th seed Miami Heat. Okay? So,
without the tiebreaker, by the way.
Without the tiebreaker.
That'll play out over time.
So
but without
I have to retire
they don't have
that.
the tiebreaker on anyone above them except for the Indiana Pacers.
So
and the Charlotte Hornets.
I have to retire that for the foreseeable future.
I don't care about the standings. They're 2-12
because they're not catching up right now with this team as they currently look. I don't have any faith that they're going to catch up to any of those teams right now. That could change, but right now, that is not the case. Oh, by the way, your $200 million free agent hyperextended the same left knee that he hyperextended in the preseason tonight at the start of the third quarter. When we come back, we'll get to more of venting with this one.
Apparently, Mother Nature is angry outside right now.
Not happy. Bring it down. Right, bring it down.
If the lights go off, it was Daryl Morey.
Thank you for joining us here on the PHLY Sixers Postgame Show presented by Bet365. We'll talk about it more on the other side. Read Super Chats, get to your chats, and also our guest, Marc Stein, in a little bit right here on the PHLY Sixers Postgame Show.
I hope these are your ads because
these are my ads, man. Don't worry about it because I don't know what the cure is right now for the Philadelphia 76ers. We have an idea, but we're not ready to go there. That being said, if you have some sort of sickness that is not Sixers related, that is really a sickness, Rite Aid is the place for you to go. And right now, with the weather going up and down, we had a good day today where it was almost like 70 degrees. You dress down a little bit. And then tomorrow, who knows, it could be 50 or maybe even 40. You got rain out there at the moment. You don't want to catch pneumonia. You do not want to do that. And to protect yourself from pneumonia, and of course, adults age 50 and older, everybody, including those higher age adults, are now eligible for the vaccine. It was previously aged at 65 plus. The CDC lowered that age recommendation to 50 plus. So that's good news for everybody. Millions of people get pneumonia every year, according to the CDC, and it's respiratory illness, as we know. And fall and winter are a time when germs that can cause respiratory disease typically spread more in the community. People get a little lax. So now is the time for you to get vaccinated and help yourself to stay healthy. Some people who get pneumonia have mild symptoms, but others, they experience serious complications, and the vaccine is one of the best ways to help keep yourself healthy, as usually with no cost right now with the insurance. Usually no cost with the insurance. And everybody, you appreciate, you don't want that copay. You just want to go in there, get the vaccine, and get out of there hoping that you're all good to go. So if you're getting vaccinated is pretty easy. Just walk into your local Rite Aid or schedule online at riteaid.com. Unsure of what vaccines you may need? Just ask your pharmacist for a personal recommendation. Stop by your local Rite Aid today. Also, our presenting sponsor here for the postgame show are good people from Bet365. It's never ordinary. Well, my pregame picks weren't all that great today because I thought a few different things would happen, including a win. Gambling Givens. Hey, might have to pass the torch to Derek Bodner and Kyle Neubeck or Brianna. We will see about that. Bet365, though, has 90 million users worldwide. They like to take my money because I'm not picking these selections right, but they do have live streams of over 780,000 events a year, early payout offers across NBA, NFL, NHL, and MLB, and they pioneered the live in-game betting. Today, Bet365 offers the widest range of games and markets available for live in-game bettings across 78 sports. And if you're a new customer, right now, sign up and you get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5 using the code PHLY365 to sign up. Deposit $10 and place a bet for $5 to get $150 in bonus bets. Bonus bets can be used on the spreads, totals, player props, futures, and more. So if you bet the under right now or whatever the Sixers in total in games finish at the end of the year in terms of wins, you might win. And you might win pretty easily. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. You must be 21 plus and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER.
Somebody said Malk C10 says, Gambling Gibbons want me looking like Jay Leno with those bet slips.
Not me, Jack. Not me. Welcome back to the PHLY 365 post-game show presented by Bet365. And right now we have to go to our guest who's joining us for the very first time here on the PHLY Sixers show. Joins us on the post-game show. And quite honestly, I thought we would be getting the Hall of Famer Marc Stein when we would be talking about, let's say, some double-digit wins and single-digit losses through 14 games. But yet, here we are as we welcome in our partner on the All-City staff here, joining us also from the DLLS team in Dallas, the newest launch in September, and they are doing a great job, a tremendous job, including the Mavericks show. We wish we were talking, Mark, like some Mavericks losses here for some Sixers wins, some Mavericks wins with some Sixers wins, but unfortunately here we are. Welcome to the show. Sorry you have to join us with such a terrible start to the Philadelphia 76ers season.
Well, I got to say, I listened to your guys' last 10, 15 minutes, and you guys are, man. No, but you guys are all over it. Like, I was riveted to every word, and, you know, about a week ago, the Mavs played the only game on the schedule in the NBA on Thursday night. They were at Utah and lost a game that Utah tried to give back to them. And I thought that was such a bad, like, that has to be the worst loss I'm going to see for any team all season. But after listening to you guys and considering all the circumstances, I think the Sixers might have just bumped the Mavs, lost at Utah. They might have gotten Dallas off the hook because, man, it is dire. I mean, there's just no way around it. I mean, this is stunningly dire. They could be 0-14.
Yeah, I mean, they're 2 overtime games, Mark, away from 0-14. That's what's crazy. And I think to your point, you bring up Dallas. The thing that the Mavericks have as an advantage is that they're coming off a finals run, right? If they start slow, if they have some bad losses, you can rationalize a little bit as, okay, this isn't good, obviously, but we've seen this team rev it up. We've seen them go on, long stretches where these guys can get it together and play high-level basketball. This is a team that there is no proof of concept for, right? I mean, majority of the roster they brought in this summer, and I guess the first thing I would ask you is, like, where do you go from here? Because this is, I mean, even the biggest skeptic of Paul George and these signings would not have imagined this type of start.
No, and look, I'm one of those people who thought that the Sixers had, like, as close to a perfect offseason as you could have. I mean, I've written it a bunch of times that, wow, Morey actually convinced Tyrese Maxey, okay, we need you to wait a year before we can pay you. Never happens in the NBA. Please wait a year. But then they did get everything done that they wanted to get done. And even the minimums and the lower cost bargain signings, they all looked so good. So no, the Sixers aren't coming off a finals appearance. I know we haven't said that for almost 25 years, but they were coming off what looked like a dream offseason. And look, I've covered Nick Nurse going back to I met Nick Nurse 25 years ago when he was coaching in England. And that's how long I've been following him. He's always been known as this super creative guy who coaching in England, coaching in the G League. I would have thought he would thrive in this chaos that has resulted from all the injuries and having to find lineups and deal with a crisis. But to hear the way you guys are talking about Nick blows my mind. Like, this whole thing is so difficult. I'm sorry for the pun. This wasn't an intended pun. This is difficult to process. It really is. To see the Sixers.
You just run into that pun over and over again. Covering this team, you can't escape it.
And even just the team meeting. Okay, we knew there was a team meeting. Tim Reynolds from the AP reports, hey, we haven't seen these guys for an hour, so there's going on. But how fast the details of that meeting leaked out. I mean, it has been chaos. And I totally agree with everything you said. To lose to the Grizzlies, as banged up as they are, I mean,
On the
when
second
you're
night of a back-to-back, by the way.
the Sixers should have been desperate tonight, and again in the second half, just overrun.
Marc Stein from the DLLS Mavericks joining us here, Hall of Famer on the PHLY Sixers Postgame show. And Mark, as you say that about Nick Nurse, we have been more on the defensive side for Nick Nurse because last season, a first-round exit, dealt with a ton of injuries. This year, again, dealing with a ton of injuries, including his 3 All-Stars that he has. So he never really got a chance to see his complete roster and to see exactly how they would play together. But with someone like you who has known Nurse for 25 years, seen how he has done this, and we also thought the same thing of being very, very creative with the lineups that he would have. What has stood out to you the most, not only from this season, but also last season, in dealing with those injuries, coaching through last year, and these first 14 games of the season? What has stood out to you from Nick Nurse?
I mean, this thing, there's just like, I'm 1,500 miles away, but the cloud that is hanging over this squad right now is palpable. And so, like, I guess the coach is always the first one to get the blame, but like, it's hard. I mean, it's hard from my seat to see, like, is it on him? I mean, is it really on him? I mean, like I said, I listened to Kyle made some very compelling points. Maybe Kyle needs to be brought into the next coaches meeting. And look,
listen, I'm certainly not qualified for that job.
Yabusele has been great, and his role probably should be expanded with the way he's playing. But it's like, I can't believe that Nick doesn't see it.
Yeah.
But look, from as far removed as I am,
yep,
it's still stunning that, like, this is the first time that the 3 main guys are out on the court together and they don't get through one game. Maxey can only go for 20 minutes. Paul George gets hurt again. And I mean, to try to even, I'm not even going to try to say silver lining, because we're beyond the point of silver linings at this point. Like, this team needs wins by any means necessary. And the Sixers are not the only team in the league that has faced I mean, you look at Milwaukee. Yeah. I mean, Milwaukee not only got off to the same 1-6 start, but has been dealing with all these headlines about how long before their guy asks out. And Giannis Antetokounmpo has just, in the last 5 games, said, we're not losing, and I'm gonna deliver this team to wins without Middleton, whatever the circumstances are. And Giannis has just carried these guys to, could have been 5 wins in a row if not for some dubious refereeing that Milwaukee lost a game on. And then Orlando. Orlando loses Banchero. They're offensively challenged with Banchero. But look at how the Magic have responded without Paolo Banchero. Now, the Sixers would counter and say, we're not just missing one guy, we've been missing all our guys. And I get it. But I mean, to be in this deep of a hole already is staggering.
Mark, I want to circle back on something you said. You mentioned the speed at which these details leaked out of that team meeting the other night. You've covered a lot of different teams and, frankly, at this point, different eras of the NBA. Do you think that's more a reflection on who is in that locker room, or do you think that's more about, how things have changed, where it's a chatty league and it's so easy to get something from, one text gets sent out or one call is made, and then that just spreads like wildfire in a way it never did before?
I think it's more of the latter, because it's always been a chatty league. It has always been a very chatty league. But yes, the tools that we have at our disposal now does make it spread. And really, it doesn't take that much to imagine that some player in that meeting tells their agent or someone close to them, and it could move in that fashion. I mean, that's as easy as it could get around. Like, there's this sinister notion that, one of the 15 players in there, specifically wanted it out. Like, that's hard for me to believe. Like, it doesn't even need to go that deep. It can get around much easier and plenty quicker. But the reason I bring up the speed is because Embiid has had such a rocky start to the season that inevitably you wonder about his reaction and just how he's going to take it. And, I have not been around this team for 1 second all season. So that was another reason why, I kind of wanted to come on with you guys, because you guys are there. Obviously, when the team's on the road, you're not there. But, I wanted to hear it more from you guys who are around them. What is the vibe like when you are there? Because it has to be, more than panicky, more than jittery. Because you asked me, what are the change? There are no options to change this thing. Really.
Yeah.
Let's be. They're not going to make a coaching change. They're not going to make a GM change. Nobody's tradable right now except McCain. You're not going to trade this rookie who's looked sensational as the number 16 pick. They're going to have to get to December 15th before they can seriously look at doing anything. They're going to have to participate in their own rescue here. And that's why tonight is so worrisome, because they had to win this game to start somewhere after this team meeting that goes viral. And you're playing an injured, an opponent that's dealing with injuries on the second night of a back-to-back, and you can't take advantage of that situation. I can't imagine what that locker room in Memphis is like right now.
At this point, does it become players only meeting after that? Because when you have one team meeting and it ends with, they made back some ground at the end, right? And yay, we can throw a parade. They fought back in the final few minutes and made it a tight game, but you're down 20 to that team with 8 minutes left in the game. That is not a team that should have even been capable of building a 20-point lead at any point in that game. Not especially when this is you're to some extent. The East standings are what they are, but their backs are against the wall. They
No
know,
question.
and I think people keep talking about, well, look, they can make up ground and they can get to, play in or the 6th seed or wherever. But with the aspirations they have, you can't. That's not acceptable either, right? Because if you end up in one of these low seeds, then as this team that's unproven, that has been slapped together in an offseason, that the question marks are there with Joel as a playoff guy, whether that's health, whether that's just performance, then you have to win every series on the road to do what you came into the season to do. And that's extraordinarily difficult. I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the only team lower than a 5th seed or a 4th seed even to win the title was the Rockets when they won in the mid-90s. And that was a back-to-back. And that was a situation where they traded for Drexler mid-season and they completely changed the team, right? So them being in that seed undersold, one, the talent, the experience, but also the process of team building they were going through. I just don't know if that's the only case that you can point to is we can get it together by kind of sneaking in and limping into the playoffs. That's a fantasy. That's a dream. I don't know how you could believe in that.
Yeah, and you nailed it. That team, they were defending champions, and they traded for Drexler midseason. So they were a 6 seed on paper, but nobody looked at them like a 6 seed, and certainly not after Drexler is reunited with Akeem Olajuwon, who's a reigning champion for the first time in his career. And look, we've seen mid-season trades. You have Drexler going to the Rockets in 95. You have Rasheed Wallace ending up with the Pistons in 04. You have Marc Gasol going to the Raptors in 2019. That's really the list when we're talking about mid-season trades that have led to championships. So, this group has to do it. And I guess the one thing you can cling to after this loss, which again is as bad as it could be, is that at least Embiid finally looked closer to the Embiid we've been waiting. We could list 25 issues with this Sixers team to this point this season. Nothing compares to the fact that in the first 3 times we saw Embiid on the court, he didn't look anything close to the guy who was averaging more than a point a minute last January when he got hurt. Last January, he was doing, he was scoring at a rate that it was Wilt Chamberlain stuff. to score, to average more points per game than minutes per game. And he has looked so far from that standard in the few instances we've seen him. So to see him have this kind of game tonight, again, so I don't know that you can't really say silver lining, because this thing has gotten too, the hole is so deep that nobody's buying silver lining. But, is that something to rally around?
Yeah, it is. And Marc Stein from the DLLS Mavericks of the All City Network, our teammate joining us here on the PHLY Sixers Postgame show. And Mark, it made me think, number one, you saying all that about Embiid and him coming out, having the game high 35, rebounding from the poor performances that we have seen. This comes on the heels of being reported out of that meeting that he didn't know what type of offense they were running, number one. That was puzzling in and of itself. But it also brought me to, we would also discuss how the Mavericks got off to a decent start last season, hit a rocky road there, made some big adjustments at the trade deadline in adding PJ Washington and Gifford, and bringing that team together, and what they have done to make it to the NBA Finals and do what they did. We tried to lean on some of that if the Sixers got into a rocky start here. But right now, I mean, what did you see, since you were with that team and you asked us about being around this group, what did you see in that team to have them turn around the way that they did to make a run to the finals, where we can maybe try to lean on some stuff to pay attention to here in Philadelphia?
Well, they tried to do what Kyle just said you absolutely don't want to do, and Kyle's totally right. I mean, the Mavs had to beat 350-win teams to get to the finals without home court advantage in any series. They did that, and then waiting for them in the finals was a Boston buzzsaw, and you saw how that turned out. Now, again, the Mavericks if the Mavericks find a way to win those finals, then they go on that very short list of teams that did make mid-season trades, and it led to a championship. But it is just the last thing, honestly, I see is some sort of miracle in-season trade that's going to turn this thing around. I mean, this is the team. This is their realistically. Embiid and Paul George have already had so many injury issues in this we're not even at Thanksgiving, and it's injury issues. That's all we're talking about with this team. So Maxey, you guard with your life. So if we're taking those guys off the table, what is the major move they can make to change anything? I mean, there isn't one. So now, Daryl Morey is always super aggressive, and they have the KJ Martin contract that everybody around the league views as something that they might try to use for some sort of down the line trade. But it's certainly not going to be. It would be a small tweak, if anything. I mean, that's why I'm saying they've rescued themselves, and mentality-wise, I mean, I can't say that I would love to be in Memphis tonight to be in that locker room, because when you're a reporter and you have to go into a locker room like that, it's often not fun because, the tension is so thick. But, I mean, I am really curious of what the vibe is like around this after such a heavily publicized team meeting. And the first game after that team meeting was subpar on multiple levels, if we're putting it very, very charitably.
That's probably more charity than they deserve. I think you've also probably given us
I should really be a lot harsher. This is Philly.
Yeah. I mean, you're not in Philadelphia, but you're with us in Philadelphia right now, so you don't have to be charitable. You can yell a little bit.
We're leaning on you, Mark. We need everything here, Mark. We're leaning on you, man. We need everything to help us out here in this one. By the way, I know I said Gifford instead of Daniel Gafford before I
didn't want to. I'm not trying to.
I was rolling. I had to ask Mark a question, and that one, but.
Well, I was just going to say, Mark, you've been super charitable with your time, speaking of, so we appreciate you coming by, stopping by, saying hello to our viewers for the first time. Hopefully we can link up in the future after potentially, the third win of the season, whenever that comes for these guys. But we are going to be leaning on you for some more insight and some intel throughout the year. So thank you very much, my friend.
Thank you for having me. And look, I'm a late night guy, so I actually love joining game shows. So this will not be the last visit.
That's actually great because Devon and I are late night guys, and Derek is not. He's the early bird out of all of us, so we can just kind of elbow him out of the picture. And welcome. This is the new PHLY Sixers show. Thank you.
I will sub in when I can.
You got it. Marc Stein, again, from the DLLS Mavericks. Check them out, absolutely, whether it's during the week for regular show times for them or also pre- and post-game on Mavericks nights as well. Marc, we can't thank you enough for spending a late night with us, being charitable with your time again, and we look forward to speaking with you again down the line. Hopefully we're talking about maybe a 10-game winning streak where it turned things around for the Philadelphia 76ers.
Buddy, let's get 2 on under our belts before we talk about 10.
2-game winning. Start with a 2-game winning streak.
You got it, man. They have to rescue themselves, as you said. Marc, thanks so much, man. We'll talk to you again soon.
Be good, guys. Take care.
Marc Stein, Hall of Famer, joining us again on this PHLY Sixers postgame show. A lot to take from that. A lot to talk about from the game. We have to get to our player of the game and so many other storylines from this one, especially since we're off on Thursday. We have to get it all out here tonight. We'll do that when we get back once again on the PHLY Sixers postgame show.
I actually really meant to leave during your ad break to go grab a nice cold Coors Light, and I'm deeply, deeply regretting it right now that Chris, I honestly would not mind a choosing of chill on the show right now. All of us need to choose chill during this 2-12 start.
I
for
said
the
I
Philadelphia
would too if it got
76ers.
really bad.
Hey, listen,
It's really bad.
We're approaching beer o'clock for Devon Givens, which is how you know things are going haywire. But, Coors Light is always there for you. You know you're getting an ice cold beer because the mountains turn blue on the bottles and cans as they hit that perfect temperature. No matter how late at night it is, no matter how dark it seems.
It's dark.
Guys, you can always take a step back, take a deep breath, and think about Cooper Flagg or Ace Bailey on this basketball team. And once you do that, you can choose chill and choose a Coors Light, a cold layered, cold filtered, cold packaged beer with a smooth finish, mountain cold refreshment. When you choose to rise above it all, choose chill, choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/PHLY basketball. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. And guys, what goes better with an ice cold beer than home improvement?
And a win, but we can't.
Well, a win would be even better. Oh, wow. Chris is really hooking it up in here. Ace Hardware Home Services is always here for you. If you're not an expert at keeping your house together, you have a leaky pipe that you need fixed. That might be a Blue Chew problem also, but it's an Ace Hardware problem for sure. And Ace Hardware Home Services is around the block with everything you need to fix that leaky pipe, the air conditioning issue, a faucet that just, you hear that drip, 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 drip at night when you're trying to fall asleep. It doesn't matter what the problem is. If it's plumbing, heating, or cooling, Ace Hardware Home Services has the trusted pros to keep your home humming all year long. Ace Hardware Home Services are bringing helpful home. Visit Ace Hardware Home Services online at www.acehardwarehomeservices.com to get you started on your next project. I sure hope these bottles are twist off. They are. Look at that.
That's laying pipe, as Kyle was saying about that Blue Chew. Yeah. Ah, man.
Well, fellas and ladies,
welcome back to the PHLY Sixers postgame show presented by Bet365. We did
I'm
mention
betting on more pain to come. That's what I'm betting on right now.
Ed Wright says Tobias is laughing in Detroit. He is. And his dad.
I bet you
Both
Terrell Harris is certainly laughing right now.
They're really laughing right now. They are really laughing, and I can't blame them right now. Even with 5 wins, whatever Detroit 6 wins they have, they're 5 more than the Philadelphia 76ers, and we don't hear a peep out of Detroit right now. So, yeah, Ed, you are absolutely right.
So I want to take the injury part out of it for now, right? It's obviously a problem for them. Nick Nurse seemed to downplay the injury after the game, but Nick Nurse has also downplayed multiple injuries that resulted in like weeks-long layoffs for different guys, including Tyrese Maxey's layoff, which we'll also get to him at some point. The first half of this game, Paul George was not hurt, and Paul George was terrible. And he has been... There are a lot of people that are coming into chat and tweeting and wherever else saying things. I told you about Paul George. This was not predictable, right? Paul George getting hurt and being, twice, a guy who can't always stay healthy. Sure, that could be predictable. Paul George forgetting how to shoot a basketball, not really predictable. And the way that they're using him, if you want to add on to the problems I have with Nick Nurse, Paul George continuing to get as many on-ball reps as he is and not leaning into his value and his catch and shoot ability, which that is the skill. It is the thing he brings to the table. Last season, admittedly, playing off of James Harden, a little bit different than playing next to McCain and Maxey, he was taking like 37 or 38% of his total shot attempts were 0 dribble shots. That's balls being passed to him, balls going up. And now a lot of what you're seeing, in fact, the majority of what you're seeing, is Paul George dribbling the air out of the ball. Paul George trying to play out of the mid post. Paul George trying to be a tough shot maker. That's not why he was brought here. It's not how he should be used. And whatever you have to do to try to get the ball out of his hands, but still feature him, right?
Yes.
Run some elevator door sets. Run some horn stuff. Run some inverted pick and rolls. Do something so that he's coming off a screen, catching the ball, and is in a position to let it go. Because when he's being asked to create, he can't get by guys right now. That's not his game. It hasn't been his game for a long time, right? Like, I think the last time you would say he was consistently getting by guys was in Oklahoma City.
But he showed a nice display of that, and with everything else in that Knicks game.
Yes.
In that first NBA Cup game. That was just a week ago. That was 8 days ago. And tonight, as Kyle was talking about running all these different sets, and he's absolutely right, this is where Nick Nurse comes into it. Run some stuff to get your guys some easy looks. I put down in my notes, as Kyle is laying all this out, Paul George had a matchup with Jake LaRavia where the ball did swing to him on the left wing. And he dribbled. And I was thinking out loud, because I said it to everybody around, all of these guys around me, go by him. Put the ball on the floor and punish him. Go by him. Instead, Jake LaRavia cut off his driving lane, forced Paul George to dribble 2 more times, and passed the basketball to Jarrett McCain, the 20-year-old rookie that we continue to talk about, and Marc Stein called sensational because of his start through 14 games. That's what Paul George gave them tonight before the injury. We'll talk about that. That stinks for him. That's twice now with that hyperextended left knee. He could not drive by Jake LaRavia. With all due respect to Jake LaRavia, he is not Marcus Smart, okay? And that was really disappointing to see that in that time before the hyperextension, where Paul George had limited touches, but when you got the touch, do something with it and not allow the defense to set up number one for the help from the weak side, but also getting by a guy who you should be getting, even at the age of 35, you should be getting by Jake LaRavia, whether it's driving to finish at the rim or your pull-up jump shot where you might get some contact on your hip as well. You knock down the shot or at least get to the free throw line for 2 free throws. And that is not what we saw in the time out there. He finished with 2 points in 17 minutes of play, got off 6 shots, 1 for 6, 0 for 2 from 3, did not get to the free throw line. And that was his performance tonight before going down with that hyperextended left knee.
It just, there's no way around it. It's not good enough. And frankly, like, we give Tyrese Maxey, no one's going to kill him for first game back. And frankly, if I was going to criticize someone or multiple someones regarding Tyrese Maxey tonight, it's the fact that he was out there at all. Because to me, he ends up playing, 19, little under 20 minutes by the end of that
1938.
game. Yeah. So he was only able to play just under 20. And the way they set it up was he played 5.5 minutes in the first half. That suggests to me he probably should not be out there at all. And you're trying to give them a boost by any means necessary. I certainly don't ding Tyrese for being a competitor. And after the meeting the other night, wanted to stand up and be like, this is my team as much as it is Joel's or Paul's, and I need to be out there. If this guy is the future of the franchise, one of the big pieces of the franchise now and moving forward, you can't put him in a position where you're putting him in some danger there, right? And it's not to say he was out there looking like he was off the pace physically. There were some moments, some flashes in the second half when he could play more. That makes me feel not great inside, right? That they're just putting him back out there. And that's how the season's already spiraling, right? We can all admit that.
Unbelievable.
The season really goes down the tubes when Maxey cannot ever be and stay healthy because you're putting him out there before he should be out there. You're asking him to do more than he should be doing as he's in the early stages of recovery. It sort of looks like that's what they did with Paul George, who just injured the exact same knee in the exact same way they did in the preseason. And there were people who suggested, hey, the timeline of return should probably be a little bit longer than they're suggesting. And they just keep getting on this treadmill of like, well, just put him on there. It'll be okay. And they're then being surprised when the guy flies off the back of the treadmill because his legs aren't working, right? Like, that's how the season goes to complete hell. And frankly, maybe some fans, not that they're wanting people to get hurt, but maybe some fans are rooting for that right now, right? For everything to just go in the shitter entirely. And you say they're tanking and they're going to be one of the, that's been in the chat every day in our Discord. I had talks with friends, family, whoever, that they're just kind of over this season and over this team. And I can't blame you, right? This is not a good product that's being put on the floor. But you can't, if that's where it's going to go, that has to be a responsible shutdown at some point later, right? It's not because you threw Maxey out there brazenly when he shouldn't be there. It's not because you rushed Paul George back because you're worried about short-term early regular season results. You have to have some kind of at least medium-term thinking here, right? Because that's how you go from it's 2-12 and at least they can get everybody on the floor to total disaster, serious injuries, and then the long-term is in jeopardy. So I hope that these guys are being responsible with the health of these players because that's a dangerous game you're playing if you're putting Tyrese at any risk at all.
And with that hyperextension, which was deemed a bone bruise for Paul George after the preseason game when he was reevaluated and checked out, he spent about 2 weeks off. He missed the first 2 weeks. You're probably going to have to give him another 2 weeks now because of this, maybe even longer to your point. I was going to say,
maybe even longer given that it's a repeat injury.
Yes, so you're probably going to have to give him some time off. He's 34 years of age, and he's gonna need to sit back, relax, and let that thing heal properly. The issue here is that we expected at least 14 games in a 7-7 team at worst, and that's not what we have here. So when you panic and ask them to come back sooner, it's partially because of the record being so poor right now for something that you did not expect after this offseason. 3 All-Stars, a complete overhaul of this roster that looked damn good this summer, that we expected a possible second-round visit again, maybe an Eastern Conference Finals appearance, and maybe even further with an NBA Finals appearance. Folks, that's a long ways away. As I jokingly say, a 10-game winning streak to get Marc Stein on, and both Kyle and Mark are like, 2 games first and get him back on. That's where they are right now. That's where this team is at this stage of the season, where we're talking about Cooper Flagg and Ace Bailey and Harper in the chat, where Sixer fans are giving up already. Baby. We know how to get the Rutgers. We're going to be there. We don't want to scout it. Chris is going with us, and we don't want to scout it, but honestly, I mean, how far away are we from
Piscataway this winter, baby?
And we got some bunking because my nephew's up there, so we can sleep on the couch. We don't have to drive back. We can come back in the morning.
The Scarlet Knights postgame show is brought to you by
from the dorm room.
365.
From the dorm room. My nephew is hosting us live from Rutgers. But man, I mean, look, folks, we try to have fun, we try to laugh here, and basketball is our escape for a lot of things. This is serious now at 2-12, where this basketball team has the worst record in the NBA. Washington had the night off, so they're off the hook. The Sixers have the worst record in the NBA right now, with Paul George, Joel Embiid, and Tyrese Maxey on the roster. And while they have missed games, we again thought this team was led by a top 5 head coach. There was a preseason ranking of head coaching, and Nick Nurse was number 2, only behind Eric Spoelstra in that preseason ranking. They have been in a number of games to win, including Miami and Phoenix and New York, and even this Memphis basketball game. The same for Orlando before that one got out of hand. And they continue to find a way to lose in the third quarter and in the fourth quarter.
They couldn't even let us have the make fun of Bodner for not being here for a win game.
They could not.
That's how bad these guys are. Right?
This is serious now. So the Sixers had their
You're ruining our lives.
Closed-door meeting. We had our session here tonight. This is no fun. We thought we would be talking about a lot of fun stuff with this basketball team. We have our fun segments that we have for you for post-game. We bring them to you. And a lot of them are just negative.
Of the game, speaking of.
A lot of them are negative because of this team. Bree, just throw the player of the game up there. We had one guy, and we had to switch it because this was the best performance you got from Joel Embiid all season. Joel Embiid was our player of the game. He got to the free throw line. He found a shooting stroke from the 15 to 17-foot range that we're accustomed to seeing. We saw some good pick-and-pop things from Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain as well. And we were like, well, at least he's got his jump shot back. We get to see that again. But it comes into this part of the season where this team, as Blanche Devereaux says, the team sucks. Says the team sucks, but.
I was going to say, to be clear, she said the team sucks, but not just that they suck. So
this stinks. This really does stink. We thought, and while the season is not over and all of this stuff can eventually turn around, we thought we would be talking about a lot of really good things through 14 games with this basketball team. Instead, it's the total opposite.
Well, quick on Joel, since he was our player of the game.
Yes.
There were still stretches of that game where I was like, I don't love how he's moving. I thought even in the first half when he had scored a quick 10 and I think he had 15 at halftime, right? It was a decent line going into half, but I was not especially encouraged with his overall movement. But I did like what I saw in terms of just the compete and the commitment and playing the entire third quarter, hedging guys on the sideline, frankly, getting into that mode where it's like, screw the rest of these guys. I'm just getting shots up and I'm going to try to carry us, right? Because that was their best shot. This was not a night. Clearly, no night has been this season a role players make shots night. But this is not a night those guys were going to carry you. It was, you got Yabu, you had McCain, and basically everybody else stunk it the hell up. And so Joel just said, get me the ball at the elbow and I will make a bunch of shots. And he's getting there, right? I still don't know what the Joel Embiid ceiling is. It's always hard to know what it is at this point in the year. But given the amount of headlines, the meeting that was leaked, everything that's been said the last couple of days, good to see him take that seriously as a leader of the team on the floor. And Paul George goes down in the middle of the game. It's like the why always me sort of thing. Still tried to rally the troops and almost did it at the end. But glad to see him get one good one under his belt. And hopefully that builds momentum. Hopefully that means they can beat a team like the stinking Brooklyn Nets. But you don't take absolutely anything for granted with this group right now.
No. And there were times where there were still some what are you doing moments with Joel Embiid. But to see him bounce back, 35 points, 10 free throws, few block shots. You saw him taking some threes too. They made a mistake there at the end of the game, both he and Reggie Jackson, by not firing it up quickly enough to get some shots off. Same thing with McCain. You're down, 4, I think it was at that point?
Yeah.
Or take the shots and give yourself an opportunity to get some offensive rebound. Maybe they're scrambling defensively where you get a much better look and knock them down. Embiid, people saying boo to take that graphic down. No, we have a thing on the postgame show, player of the game. He was the player of the game. We have to highlight that after
35
criticizing
points,
him.
11 rebounds.
after criticizing him the way we did after his poor performance against Miami and talking about the team meeting, we give him his credit where credit is due. 35 points plus some other things from the other 20 from McCain. What's that, 6 straight now for 20 plus for Jared McCain, 17 for Yabusele off the bench. This was a winnable game for this team. They needed to defend better. We haven't talked about that against the three-point line. They helped off way too much. They helped off, leaving so many guys wide open for three-pointers. And as a result, the difference was 19-11 and made three-pointers in favor of the Memphis Grizzlies. So with that, your turnovers were down with 14. You rebounded well enough where it was an even number, 41-41. Offensive rebounds, you had more, 14-9. There were some of these things that were in your favor to win this game. But another thing that happens is when you don't defend the three-point line well enough, you're going to have a +8 for your opposition. You're generally going to lose that game where everything else is tied for the night.
Yeah, and there were some comments that were like, well, you just can't win. And you can't, right? When the margins are that big at the three-point line, you can't. But I think there are some people chalking it up to like, well, it's just a bad shooting luck night.
No, you could have
Memphis made their own luck, and the Sixers allowed them to do it, right? Their perimeter defense was not good enough. They were not connected enough. I mean, we could go down the list, whether it was Kelly, Caleb, Ricky, Jared, Tyrese. All of these guys had moments throughout the game where they're helping off someone that they shouldn't, or they blew a rotation, or there wasn't an X out, or there wasn't a properly timed switch. Like there are so many problems. And I will say this is where I give Nurse some slack, right? Because I think you can see so many of these guys have just never played with each other before. Now, should he have locked in on some lineups over the last few weeks when you've had all the quote unquote depth guys available, right? So you should have been at least able to fall into, okay, this is like a 3-man group that I want out there in bench minutes, or this is a group that when Paul George is out, I want these guys there. Like you should be able to figure some stuff out like that. They've discovered almost nothing about this team other than the fact that Jared McCain's really good. Guerschon Yabusele should probably play. Other than that, you don't really even know what you have with this team because they have not been productive with the time that they've had. So that to me is the most damning thing for the coaching staff is like, yeah, you're 2-12, but you could be 2-12 and be like, hey, I can see the vision here. I can see something being built. I can see the combinations, the lineups coming together, or hey, this nice 2-man game like we saw in the preseason. Kyle Lowry and Yabusele kind of fell into some easy 2-man stuff right away. And we've seen some stuff for Jared McCain and Joel Embiid, although probably not near enough of that tonight. But there are just not enough concepts, not enough defensive groups or, 3-point shooting lineups that have been put together. Because, look, frankly, I think now that McCain we view as a real guy, you have different styles of lineup that you can put on the floor, and they just have no solutions. There's just been nothing. It's really, really disappointing. I get that Paul George being as bad as he has is a big part of that, but that's not a catch-all excuse to be as kind of hopeless and directionless as they are right now.
And if you remember when his injury happened, Gina Mizell was in the locker room in Atlanta in the preseason, and he talked about the main disappointing thing was not being able to continue to develop the continuity and the chemistry with his teammates in the preseason. And that's also a time, Kyle, where you try to figure some things out, especially with so many new players. And after coming off of what they believed, and look, they all believe it in training camp, but they really believed that they had a solid training camp, even with all the new people, including Jared McCain
Atlantis
and
is
Yabusele.
cursed.
Maybe Atlantis is because we're not going back to the Bahamas next year, guys. We'll be in New York, Jersey, or something.
I have my beef with the Denver Nuggets fans. That Fort Collins training camp was eons past whatever this one was because they came out the chute ready to go, man. And that was a team that James Harden was just like, nah, I'm good.
I'm good, man.
And they're playing like D House and PJ Tucker the first week of the season.
Man.
And that group was firing on all cylinders. Crazy. Crazy the difference that a year makes.
Well, they're still trying to fire on some sort of cylinders here, and it's not working right now. The Brooklyn Nets are next on Friday to start a 3-game homestand. Let's see if they can pick up some wins there, because it doesn't look all that good, especially if Paul George is going to be down.
If they lose to Ben Simmons,
it's going to be rough.
You don't want that guy.
It's going to be rough.
With that team.
No.
Getting to rub your nose in it. That's
all right.
That's all I'll say.
Let's run some of these super chats, because we have a ton.
We do.
Of super chats.
The people want to be heard, and I don't blame them.
We thank everyone for these super chats. Let's run them from Cannoli starting. Daryl Morey punted a whole season for this.
It's a sentiment we've heard quite a bit, and
Cannoli,
I don't blame you for thinking that.
I thought it was a good off season, man. I really did. I thought it was a good off season.
Hold on. Can we skip down? Frank
Go
C.
for it.
Said, thanks for these reviews. If we lose to Ben Friday, I'm saying, man, you can't lose to that guy.
Again, I watched Ben the other night, 2 nights against the New York Knicks. It's the same stuff. So to your point, both of you, you're right. But they've been winning games. They've been winning games. Kyle, they've been winning games. Even with his mistakes, they've been winning games.
He scored double-digit points last night, I'm pretty sure.
Like 28 out there. Cam Johnson is dropping 6 threes. It's working for the Brooklyn Nets under their new head coaching staff. And Jody Fernandez has them playing some tough basketball, just to be completely honest, after watching the Brooklyn Nets. They're better than the Sixers right now.
Sorry, I had to skip to that one since that was
no problem.
What we were talking about already.
No problem. Jay Flo says, as we talked about it, tank for Cooper Flag. Not there yet, Jay Flo, but we're almost there, man.
Listen, every day
we're
get one day
there.
closer.
Oh, my goodness.
I'll be transparent. I don't want to watch as much college basketball as I would need to be able to have real opinions on all these guys, but
we know they're at least
unavoidable.
Good. We know they're good. We stay with Cannoli also, who jumps back in. Any chance the GM or coach get fired if this continues? As Marc Stein said, and as Kyle said,
I don't think
not
so.
Right now. It doesn't appear to be the case. No.
Now, if they're 2-20, if they're 3-20,
then there's something is probably likely to happen.
I think
we don't know where, but something.
Nothing happens until it does, right? It's a stupid way to look at it, but right now, as things stand, no, it's not going to happen. If it goes way off the rails, or look, if you would have told me 3 weeks ago Joel was going to shove Marcus Hayes and get suspended by the NBA, I would have said, you're crazy. Why would he care about what Marcus Hayes has to say?
Right.
Well, lo and behold, he did. If you tell me today Nick Nurse is going to be fired in 2 weeks, I would say that doesn't seem possible. But I didn't think 2-12 would be possible either. So I would say it's very, very, very unlikely. I do think this is, I mean, whatever you say about the Sixers, outside of what happened at the end with Hinkie and the Colangelos, generally they have stood behind people in season. Right now, after the season and after you run some burner accounts or leak private information or whatever, you're going to get your butt kicked out the door fairly quickly. But they have generally not been a remove the executive, remove the coach in the middle of the year, unless there are extreme circumstances. I don't think we're that far removed from extreme circumstances, but I would bet that they bet on it.
I think the 20-win plateau, if that number is still low single digits like that, then I'm with you that's when something really happens. Nick Nurse is just trying to play in some cover bands, drink some beer, and choose chill instead.
Who was it the other day that was like, no more Mount Joy piano covers until you win 10 games?
Yes. That's great. That is great. All right, Truth Teller jumps in and says, Nurse is coaching, malpractice, putting Andre in when they didn't check in Clark. They had Huff and LaRavia, no chance to succeed. Egregious acts.
Now, I'll add something onto this that I don't think we touched on earlier. You know, I'd have to go back and look. Did you see there was a moment in the fourth, early in that stretch where Yabusele came to the table, looked like he was going to sub in for Drummond. I think Scott Foster said it was too late and wouldn't let him in. And then there was another stoppage fairly soon after, and they left Drummond in the game, right? Yabusele was not coming in at that point, and it was like, are we watching the same game?
Nurse was tricked by the 11 points that Andre Drummond had and a couple of finishes and the few rebounds that he grabbed where it was the good Andre Drummond. But it wasn't really about Andre Drummond not playing well enough. It was more about what the personnel was on the other side, plus Yabusele playing really well and forcing them to defend his stretch shooting from beyond the three-point line. That's where the problem really laid there, is because he was shooting well, he's playing well, he needs to play. Drummond has to sit. Unfortunately for him, he has to sit. So that's where that one went. So you can place the blame there, and you're absolutely right to do so. We appreciate the super chat. Skunk Riley with 2 super chats, and we thank, 3 of them. And they're all just donations, and we appreciate it. That's all 3, all of them, Bree. That's the only ones. Skunk Riley. 4 of them. He finally asks something, and it says, "This feels like Eddie Jordan coaching Van Horn, Chris Webber, Tyrone Hill, and an injury X AI." That was really bad.
Now, the Eddie Jordan season
was... That was really bad. Didn't he get fired in the middle of the season? He did get let go in the middle of the season, but I think I think he got the full season.
I thought he got the full. It was a 1 year.
It was
and
a
then
1
he got
year,
fired,
so
and then that's when they drafted Evan Turner. Right.
Yeah. You're absolutely right.
First of all, by the way, just for some behind the music stuff here, I pulled up Eddie Jordan's wiki, or I thought I did, and the first Eddie Jordan that came up is an Irish businessman. And when I say to you, he looks like my dad crossed with John Lennon in this picture. So it was just like, what is going on here?
From afar, I was like, is that Sean Penn? Look at it.
Eddie Jordan. We're going way off the rails.
Yeah, we are. But go ahead, get your Eddie Jordan numbers up there if you want to before we get to the next
I'm pretty sure he survived the year, and it did the same thing. I pulled up the same Eddie Jordan. Here we go. I got to search Eddie Jordan basketball.
1 year?
1 year.
1 season as the Sixers head coach, Eddie Jordan.
That was a
New Jersey native.
This was like, they fired him April 15th.
Okay,
that was
immediately.
Like, the season ended.
Season's over.
You're fucking out.
Hey, he was
Shout
still
out
getting
to Kenny
paid.
Powers.
He was still getting paid. He was still getting paid, though.
You ever watch that show, Eastbound and Down?
Fantastic.
Very funny show.
Underrated movie from that whole group. This is the end.
Oh, the scene where, what is it?
Underrated.
Cypress Hill is playing the next morning, and he's like making an omelet, and it's him. That movie, I agree with you. It's not underrated. Like, it's not in like that era of like Pantheon, but I would say it's definitely.
But it's
underrated.
in that group of all of them with
Danny
Rogan
McBride's really funny. You ever watch The Righteous Gemstones?
Yeah.
Oh, great show. Great show.
That whole group is unbelievable, and that movie is underrated. Underrated. Jay Baruchel, all of them. Yeah. Fantastic. All right, let's keep it going. Marty Bones. Would have paying Harden been a better option?
So
we weren't opposed to it in the moment.
I would say we've gotten into this recently a little bit. I think off air, right?
Yeah.
So there are a few things here. One,
and I have a counter question to that one.
One, the book on Harden is great regular season guy, playoffs, right? Mm-hmm. And I am not taking out that he won them 2 games almost single-handedly in that Boston series, right? That's real. He's had plenty of good playoff moments, but he also has fallen flat on his face. That's not to say that Paul George is, Mr. Playoff guy. That's well documented, but I think some people were just like, the book's out on Harden, try it a different way and replace Tobias Harris, believe in Tyrese Maxey. 2, there's this sentiment that they could have had James Harden for the money that he's making in LA. I don't necessarily believe that. I mean, I talked to all parties involved. I think in Philly, James Harden wanted and probably expected a max. Now, his side has contested that. He eventually signed for well under a max with LA, but I think that was part of the divide, right? I thought he was unlikely to sign a less than a max here. I don't know that it was impossible because they never really got to the point of sitting at the table, hashing out numbers, all that. We don't need to relitigate all that. Now, the other side of it is that James Harden, straight up, better regular season player than Paul George,
yes,
right?
He's
been very good this year. He was good in LA last year. And it's certainly a sliding doors moment to some extent. How does the team change around him? What happens if you keep him? Is PJ Tucker still here? There are a lot of other downstream things. Most importantly, what does Tyrese Maxey become playing just next to James Harden? Do we still look at him the same? Do you believe in him as future star rather than a sidekick? And can he become the guy you want him to be 2 and 3 years from now if he's not able to have last year and this year as, I'm the guy, I'm the perimeter leader.
5-year deal, man.
Yeah. So there's a lot
tough.
that goes into it, but it's worth asking the question. I know there are lots of Harden skeptics out there. He has issues, but he is a first ballot Hall of Famer for a reason. And you want to talk about shot creation, general durability, despite his off court stuff and all that. Outside of the Brooklyn season where his hamstring was basically
wasn't
toast.
his fault. Yep.
But yeah, James Harden's very good. He's been better than Paul George this year. That's pretty clear. What is your follow-up?
Real fast, James Harden, now second of all time in made 3-pointers, just behind Stephen Curry. He also said, which I thought was fantastic, I'm first because Steph doesn't count because it's Steph, right? He's all by himself. He's first because Steph is so far away. My question was this, and it is revisionist history, but we did talk about it a lot. And that was the DeMar DeRozan thing. Regular season, same thing, 23 points a game, still not shooting threes, which was the biggest beef for both you and Derek, where we were just talking about a guy that does play. He scores in double figures, also can give you some help there closing games. He can have his own runs where he can help where things get a little stagnant. And while the Kings are 8-7, they are in a tough Western Conference. He is averaging 23 for that team, playing really well for that basketball team, and at a much better contract at 3 years, $73.8 million. Again, it's revisionist history, but it was one that we talked about quite a bit in the offseason.
And look, if we go that route, you could also be like, well, they could have traded for Brandon Ingram, right? Who's also out there and available. Now he's hurt right now, so
but he was playing well.
He was playing reasonably well, and he has not played well enough for the Pelicans to do much of anything this year. But that's also on a team with somehow more injuries than the Sixers, which is basically impossible. So. Yeah, if Paul George doesn't start playing better, we're going to get into a lot of conversations of the what ifs and what they should have done. I don't necessarily want to do all the relitigating of the offseason, but until Paul hits, high 30s from 3 and starts looking like a guy who can consistently make an impact on offense, more criticism's going to come. And I've said it a couple times this week. He is going to learn the difference between playing in Indiana, OKC, and as the redheaded stepchild in LA and being in Philadelphia. That is a different beast, my friend, and I hope you are ready for it.
You asked that question on the podcast. You had to answer that question on the podcast, and you asked Kelly Oubre. I think Tyrese Maxey also in your podcast P. About to find out, buddy. About to find out. All right. Shahid checking in with a super chat. Going to play Ghost of what is that?
Ghost of Tsushima, or I don't know if it's Tsushima or Tsushima. Game? It's a PlayStation game where I actually beat this game. I wish I knew how to actually pronounce it. You're a samurai in feudal Japan who's got to restore honor to your family and rescue your uncle, and
Shahid says he's going to play that game.
Shahid, it's a great game. The ending is awesome, and I'm looking forward to the sequel.
Says the chat is too damn angry for November basketball. At least it's not Doc Rivers. Go Birds. 8-2. 8-2. Big game against the Rams on Sunday night.
Hey,
yeah.
then we'll be watching the Sixers.
And speeding through it, too, so we can watch some good product of a local sports team in the Birds. Davon with us here in the Super Chat. With shooting being at a premium, what was Morey doing?
The easy one to look back on is, why didn't you prioritize Buddy, right?
Yeah.
And I will remind people that they would have had to use cap space on him, because I believe the mechanics of how that worked out, they had to renounce his rights to free up the cap space to get Paul George. And so Derek would be a better source on this than me at midnight while I'm drinking Coors Light.
Simple cap space of the Drummond numbers that Derek was laying out and disappointed with in the moment?
I have to go back and check who would have been impacted by that exactly. But yeah, I mean, regardless of who it was, whatever it would have been, if you had to use an exception, whatever it might be, yes, I think it's becoming clear that maybe if you believe in Paul George, maybe you should have just gotten more shooters, right? And just really load up around these guys, because it's become clear they're going to send a lot of help and a lot of pressure in the middle of the floor, and they're going to make Kelly Oubre, Caleb Martin, Yabusele, whoever hit shots. That's why Yabu's got to play, because he's the only guy who's hitting them. And
that's why when you look at the other teams in the Eastern Conference, the good ones, you look at and you see guys knocking down shots that are role players. Sam Hauser, Kyle always says he never misses a shot. He's 100% from three-point range. Pritchard on that team knocking down shots. Forget about the stars. Then you go to Cleveland where you have Merrill and Niang knocking down shots as well, finding these shooters. And while the Sixers, they have one in McCain, it doesn't hurt to have Buddy Hield there with them, maybe finding another diamond in the rough somewhere else to come in and knock down shots. And quite frankly, they probably thought that was Eric Gordon in his role of just catch and shoot guy. But because of not being able to have a complete roster, you're asking him to do too much. He's doing way too much. He's out there playing too many minutes, and he's not knocking down shots now either.
But even then, so like somebody that comes up a lot with our boss Vince in conversation, he was an advocate for Derek Jones Jr., right? Mm-hmm. And Derek Jones Jr. is shooting really well this year. For his career, he's a bad shooter.
Yes.
But in the playoffs last year, he also was a guy that teams said, we're going to dare you to shoot. And he made enough shots that Dallas goes on a finals run, right? He was a critical, integral part of that team. And the Clippers have reaped the rewards of, hey, let's hope that sustains. Let's hope that maybe this is a turning point for him. But we don't know, right? Like, I would say if 9 years into your career, you're a 32% shooter, which that's what Derek Jones is. You're probably not a 44% shooter from three, which is what he is right now. Some of this, I hate to chalk it up to this, is just luck, right? Yeah. You got to get guys in a career year or when they're on an upswing, and it's not always cheap to get guys in an upswing. So that's not to excuse that they don't have enough shooting, but sometimes it really just does come down to right season, right time. It does not help that Caleb appears to be dealing with a shoulder problem as well. But that's a story for another day.
Yeah, he only took 3 shots tonight, 1 for 3 tonight. He hustled and he did all that stuff that Caleb Martin does. But the shot attempts, field goal attempts down big time tonight. Druid.
Looks like a Jokic guy.
Yeah, Druid traded. All right. At least your cheesesteaks ranks number 1 with the laughing emoji. Cheesesteaks are pretty damn good. By the way,
our sandwiches in general are way better.
We're pretty damn good.
I'm going to go on a bit of a sidebar here. There was some mourning today over Jersey Mike's being acquired by a big, I think it's either a VC fund or maybe I don't know, whatever. They got bought out by a big investment firm. And there were so many people around the country like, oh, no, how could that happen? And I saw a few people from Philadelphia like, man, you guys need to move where they make real sandwiches, brother. Like,
how about
that's not casting any aspersions. Like, Jersey Mike's makes perfectly fine sandwiches.
I guess.
But if you're like, hey, I'm going to pour one out for the homie over at Jersey Mike's, God damn, you guys need to get some better sandwiches. Move somewhere with some culture, please. Do it for yourself.
Enjoy your subs. We'll have hoagies.
But Jersey Mike's, if you ever want to sponsor us, I will promise I'll give you the best sales pitch ever.
I've never had it, but I will if you sponsor this show. And we'll call them hoagies right here on the show.
Ain't no damn subs.
Because that's what they are, hoagies. All right, drew it again. The year is 2025, and Cooper Flag is calling out Embiid for being late, always late.
Listen, brother, if
Thanks
Cooper
for the
Flag
donation.
ends up on this team, I think most people here would consider that
Thank you for the donation.
a positive outcome.
Our sandwiches are fantastic here in town. You should come try
There
some.
was a good sandwich place, I will say, in Fort Collins that the name escapes me, that Derek and I went to before we left. So,
all right. Yeah.
they have exactly one good sandwich
One good
place.
sandwich. You got a lot of sandwich shops you need to catch up to Philadelphia. Brian Pumper says, we used to win these games when Embiid was conditioning. Kyle, Devon, this is different. The guy looks like Valanciunas without the physicality.
I don't agree with that. So I don't have much more. He dropped 35 and was efficient and played pretty well.
Yep.
Not peak Joel Embiid, but very good Joel Embiid.
Yeah. Bane banged a three and points at Caleb. And where was the rest of the team? Caleb stood up to the team, stepped in, and Embiid even got after it with Bane a little bit. Well, it was something that they got double text for. They're trying to crack down.
I'm a little surprised that wasn't just a tech on Bane to start with that.
I agree,
whole thing.
because all Caleb Martin said was, don't do that. Don't do that. So there was no need for it. But look, they got double text. It wasn't much. You appreciate the toughness from Caleb Martin. That's what you thought you were getting from him in the first place to go with everything else. And the team didn't need to step in and defend him for anything. They settled it. They handled it. Wasn't any pushing and shoving. He just simply said, don't do that.
He handled his business, and they all moved on.
That was fine. I didn't need anybody else to come in there and push and shove and escalate something that didn't need to be escalated.
I don't need fake tough guys.
No, didn't need that. Finally, our final super chat, Davon says PG should be playing more Clay than who?
More Clay than Shea.
Shea?
See,
right.
So the play style, I get what he's
I
saying.
got
Is listen, Davon, you're preaching to the choir. I've been trying to express that point in so many ways, and here we are with pull up P.
Pull up P.
That's what we're left with.
Folks, we did a marathon here tonight.
Marc Stein came on, and then we decided we had a whole nother show afterward. So
super chats all over the place.
Damn super chat. No, listen, we love hearing from all of you.
Yeah.
And you're as much a part of this show as we are, right? By the way, I went back and checked. Yabusele did not play at all in the fourth quarter. So he came to the table as Drummond is getting destroyed. Couldn't get in. And then Nurse was like, that doesn't seem like, in my head, I thought he was on the floor at some point, but
it doesn't seem right.
Box score, play-by-play, they all say. I pulled this up and I was looking through. I was like, did I miss something? I could have sworn that it's all a fever dream, right? It's after midnight now it's technically Thursday as we're talking. So maybe that's a sign to go home, that I'm inventing big Frenchmen on the floor who were not out there at the end of the game, right? I'm seeing things, Devon. Woo!
He was on his minute restriction. He was done. Yabusele, 19 minutes and 17 seconds. He scored
by the coach who wants
17 points. So I guess it wasn't Paul George who was fighting the coach tonight. It was Yabusele versus Nick Nurse tonight, because he did not play him in the fourth quarter, which was ridiculous. Folks, it's time for us to go. We got to say thank you to Marc Stein for joining us. We appreciate Marc Stein.
I still think that feels wrong. I think Yabusele was out there, but
I checked the other official box score like you did, and he was not in there for the fourth quarter. 19 minutes and 17 seconds overall on the night. That's what it says.
Guy hit 3 threes in the third and kept the game close. And maybe you could have used them when you actually needed the score and whatever.
Thank you, Marc Stein from the DLLS Mavericks and the All-City team. We appreciate him for joining us on such a rough night once again. We appreciate our presenting sponsor, as always, for the post-game show, Bet365. Download the Bet365 app and use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. We have a roll call to get to. We're off tomorrow, folks.
We are off tomorrow.
So make sure you go read allphly.com for Kyle's postgame story. He and Derek also put up some stories earlier today, so they are available to you. You have to be a diehard member for those.
That's right.
So make sure you sign up for the diehard membership to be able to read those stories, and you'll also have an opportunity to read the good, bad, and the ugly. There was a lot of ugly as you lose.
There's always
your 12th game.
Another day until there isn't, everyone. So we're on this ride together. We're happy to have you with us.
I'm hungry.
The support that you guys give us is as passionate as it is for the team. And I know I can speak for Devon, Derek, Bree, Chris, who's with us here tonight, when we say we all deeply appreciate that. So thank you.
Except for you didn't bring us any hoagies.
Hey.
We were hungry. Where were you?
I would take a Jersey Mike's right now. I'll tell
Next
you that.
time, bring us a hoagie.
Thank you to Skunk Riley, to Jess, to Winona.
Hey, Nona.
To SB Cole.
What up, SB?
Bootzilla.
Boots. We need to put a boot up somebody's you-know-what to get this thing going.
Druid Trading, who said, do not lose hope, people. So I don't know if they're actually a Denver person. Now that I saw the Jokic. But even still, Druid, we appreciate you stopping by. And then there are some people who come from other places that like to cause trouble.
Although he says, eat some cheesesteaks and beer and eat the sorrow away.
I mean,
well, if you're coming to town, we'll get you a cheesesteak.
Better yet, I'll take you to Reading Terminal and we'll have a smorgasbord.
Which might be very busy in the PHLY future.
Yes, it might. And we'll see some of you there, hopefully. Cannoli in the building. X-Man, Doug Craig. My guy,
Holy
Eugene
cannoli.
Ross in the building.
What up, Gene?
Hey, Aaron.
What up, Aaron?
AC Philla.
AC. Stop yelling at
Louis.
us. Who?
Louis.
What up, Lou?
Not to be confused with my dog, Louis.
Nah, the best Louis. Finding sticks everywhere.
PHLY guy. What up, my friend? John Blaze.
John Blaze. That's one of the underrated Fat Joe songs, man. The collaboration was fantastic.
Shout out to Just Blaze as
Just
well.
Blaze.
Malk C10.
What up, Malk?
In the building. There are a lot of damn
I'm
people
going
on
home
here
to watch
tonight.
This Is the End.
Sir Schmooey. GOPRZ. Our guy Al, the 2-minute warning.
What up, Al?
Shout out to Kenny Powers, a.k.a. Danny McBride, a.k.a. whichever gemstone he is. Ed Wright.
Eddie.
Hanging out with us. The Ghost, 7341.
What up, Ghost?
Money Mar, Public Enemy
What up,
#1.
Mar?
I Gavini, Charles B. Joaquin. F. Chillaxing. Bree, who are our many super chatters in here tonight? We got Cannoli, Truth Teller, Shahid, J Flow, Frank C, Marty Bones, Davon, Skunk Riley, Druid, Brian Pumper, and I believe that is all of them.
Thank you, everybody.
That's all the shout outs for tonight, everybody. We got to get the heck out of here. We are off on Thursday. We will be back for Friday, the Ben Simmons Bowl. Maybe win number 3. Derek and I believe, will be at the arena.
Yes, you will be.
Devon and will it be
Rich
on the desk Friday night for pregame and postgame. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon for notifications each and every time we go live.
Marc Stein gets one of these too.
That's damn right. Hit the thumbs up button, por favor.
Thank you, everybody.
To help us with the algorithm, but also to say thank you to Chris hanging out with us. And as always, to say thank you to super producer Bree.
The Sixers are so bad
making
right now.
sure the show keeps moving, keeps flowing, and all the people.
Thursday off.
We definitely needed Thursday off. I'm going to finish the Penguin tomorrow. I'm going to have myself a nice, relaxing day. We will see you Friday. Until then, good night, good luck, goodbye. Get home safe.
See you, gang.
Goodbye.
We all silly like the mayor.